Usually this is the time of the service where people with really good voices stand up and sing. I'm going to take over that little part today. And you're not going to hear me play guitar very often because I can never hit the first note. Be prepared for that. I can never hit the first note. We'll get into it eventually. And there are always better guitar players around here. Luke's sitting over there. He's going to play in a few weeks for us to start service. And I talk too much already. Why should I have to play guitar? But all week I've been thinking about this woman in our story that you just read about. And all week I've been thinking, if she was around today, she's divorced 4 or 5 times. She's not accepted by the Jews, and she's shunned by her own people to the point where she can't even get water in the morning. Now, do you know what it's like to be, well, some of you know what it's like to be a woman today, and it's hard enough. But back then, to be a woman in that culture, they didn't have margaritas from Mamacita's. They didn't have coffee shops. They didn't have any opportunity, just as women, to sit around and talk. I understand that's what women like to do, just to sit around and talk. And they couldn't do it. It's just about the only time in their culture that women could gather without men, without that oppression, was each morning. Every morning, they'd pull out their jug, they'd walk to the well, they'd slowly draw the water for the day, and everyone would wait until everyone got their water, because that was the only time that they could sit there and gossip and complain about their husbands, and I don't even do whatever women do. I have no idea. Whatever you would do, imagine that's what happens every morning. Except this woman in our story. She's not there in the morning. She's there at noon. She was so harassed, maybe she was so ashamed, probably both, but whatever it was, she stopped going to the well in the morning with the other women, and she skipped any chance of companionship, and instead she came there at noon in the hot sun, alone. And I've been thinking about this woman and wondering if she was around today, with all her experiences, how would she feel about just church and about us? And my guess is she'd probably be pretty scared, because normal people are judgmental enough, but have you heard about church people recently? And she has tons of baggage, and church people love to gripe about baggage. And it's clear she's not really an expert on faith or religion or any of that. She'd never fit in. And why would she want to fit in here? I can't imagine she'd ever want to walk through any church doors, no matter how open the doors are, or the minds, or the hearts, or the arms. There are people in our world who have been so burned, even by God's followers, that the idea of looking and searching for God is just, it's not a starter. It's impossible. I've been thinking about this woman, and even though I kind of have that sense of her, don't you have this other sense that the way she opened up to Jesus and the way she asked him questions, don't you sense she was also open to something about the world that is deep and meaningful? That she was thirsty for her life to matter? And she didn't have the faithy language that we use sometimes here, and maybe she didn't know what to call that yearning, and she probably didn't know how to follow it the way that churches direct that. But don't you sense she has something we would call spirituality? And it's just kind of my guess, but if the Samaritan woman were around today, literally right now, at this very moment, if she lived in Nederland, she'd probably be snowshoeing, not in church, but out with her boyfriend. Maybe they'd be walking through and seeing the way the ice is melting and in the shadows by the moose tracks, and they'd talk about the beauty, and they'd talk about how it all came to be, and he'd ask her, what do you think it all means? And she'd say, oh, I don't know, I'm spiritual, but not religious. I've been thinking this week about how Jesus talks with her and what we might learn from him about talking to people who are spiritual but not religious and on their own terms, not our terms. Notice how he leans into her most natural desire toward that living water. He doesn't draw her to his own faith tradition. He doesn't invite her to come on Sunday morning or Saturday night. Isn't it interesting that he doesn't offer one explanation or he doesn't offer some specific practice? Instead, in order to meet her deepest longing, he just points to regular stuff in life. He gets her attention saying, let's talk about clean water. He gets her attention by saying, let's think about how to have a deep relationship with your loving partner. And let's think about how to have reconciliation with all these people in your life, in your town, who frustrate you. Jesus seems to know that there was a way to invite her into the best things about a rich and holy life before she's ever remotely able or willing to think about beliefs or systems or new ways of living or any of that stuff. Our woman in this story wouldn't have anything to do with an esoteric sermon about heart and mind and church and God, but she's captivated by this guy Jesus. And when he shows up and cares for her, and he cares for all the little stuff in her life, the regular things in her daily life, she is wrapped with attention. And so, I was thinking about all that stuff, and this song just kind of followed me all week. I couldn't get it out of my head. I was posting it on Facebook. I was whistling it all the time. I was practicing it in the office back there. And it really shouldn't be sung by anyone under 50, because it's about a lot of stuff that I haven't gone through yet. But it's a good song. It's not a song about God. It's probably never been played in church, ever. But it's about a man surveying the wonder and the mistakes and the pain and the dirt and the joy and the purpose in life, surveying all the people who have mattered, all those things that make his life and that make your life worth living. And the song's about how all those things, when you infuse them with love, and when you weave that all together and connect your life, all the different parts, with love and forgiveness and purpose, that's what makes our life special and valuable. So this song's been rolling through my head as an answer to this Samaritan woman. And in the song, he's looking back on his life, and he's looking back on all these different kinds of love in his life, and all the kinds of love that all of you have in your life. And he looks at the love of a partner and the patience it takes to be in that kind of a relationship. He looks at what it's like to have close friends and just sit around a table with a bottle of wine. He looks around, parents, dads especially, he looks at what it's like to love a child. And he looks at nature, and he thinks about what it's like to clean up the environment and have a purpose in that. And all those relationships and all those situations through the most normal and important parts of his day, he says, just another day. This song is about how love calls us to our deepest selves, to our deepest soul. And someone might call that spirituality, someone might call that spirit, someone might call that God. The author, Greg Brown, is who wrote this, and he didn't name it any of that, but he does say in the chorus, love calls like the wild bird. Maybe because I'm spiritual, maybe because I'm also religious, I'm both. I just can't help but think about that bird, maybe having it something to do with the dove that came down at Jesus' baptism. Up there on the banners, how many birds are there up there? There's a handful of birds up there. 6 whole birds, 6 whole banners. As though there's some connection with this. And maybe that dove up there and the wind that he's going to sing about, I'm going to sing about his song. The Greeks call wind pneuma. The Hebrews call it ruach. That's a cool word. Say that with me. Ruach. Only a couple ch's enough in there. But both are the same word. Wind and spirit, it's the same word. So maybe when this song talks about the wind, there's some hint about the Holy Spirit weaving herself into our most normal life and finding a sacred connection for anybody through everything in our life. The song title is Spring Wind, and this is a stretch. I don't think Greg Brown was going for this, but you remember what we said last week? What does the word Lent mean?
Spring.
Long, but we come to mean spring. And so maybe this song just might, you can imagine, a spring wind is a Lenten spirit. And maybe that Lenten spirit can blow away our focus on all the menial stuff in our life and call us to new life. And maybe without any of the religious junk getting in the way, Lenten spirituality might even call us to live with some intentional focus on love. Lived a while without you, darn near half my life. No longer see our unborn children, born to an unwed wife. But yesterday I had a vision beneath a tree where we once talked of an old couple burning their love letters so their children won't be shocked. Love calls like the wild bird. It's another day. A spring wind blew my list of things to do away. My friends are getting older, so I guess I must be too. Without their loving kindness, I don't know what I'd do. Oh, the wine bottle's half empty and the money's all spent, and we're a cross between our parents and hippies in a tent. Love calls like the wild bird. It's another day. A spring wind blew my list of things to do away. In a messed up lonely river I cast my little fly. Look at the river and smell it, and it makes me wanna cry. Oh, to clean out a dirty planet, now there's a noble wish. I'm putting my shoulder to the wheel 'cause I wanna catch some fish. Love calls like a wild bird. It's another day. A spring wind blew my list of things to do away. Children, go to sleep now, you know it's getting late. I know you don't like to miss nothing, and school ain't that great. But I'll dance with you when you're happy, and hold you when you're sad, and hope you know how glad I am just to be your dad. Love calls like a wild bird. It's another day. A spring wind blew my list of things to do away. Darling, it's been a hard go, but I think we'll be okay. I know I say that all the time, like everything else I say. Oh, I've been gone so often, but every time I miss you, and I don't really know nothing except I wanna kiss you. Love calls like a wild bird. It's another day. A spring wind blew my list of things to do away. All right, so that's Greg Brown, and if you listen to other songs by him, or if you ever hear him interviewed, he has this really deep kind of voice, and you'd swear he's from the South. You'd swear just the way he talks. He's from the South. Actually, he lives in Iowa on a little farm. He grows carrots. He grows onions, things like that. He makes these raised beds with old railroad tires and ties. And his wife, he hangs out with his wife, Iris DeMent. If you like her, we're going to sing a song by her on the week after Easter. I love her. If it was up to me, I'd just sing folk music all the time in here. Where they live is very rural, and it gets hot, and they're out on a farm. And if you've ever lived in a place like that, you know what happens when the sun goes down and the bugs come out in the summertime, and you hear that kind of those reassuring sounds like little crickets and then bzzz. Anyone here have a bug zapper in town? I don't know if we need a bug zapper in this town, but in the South, they're on every porch. Where I grew up, we had the little yellow swirly things in the kitchen just filled with flies. And in the back, we had citronella going everywhere to keep away the mosquitoes. In the front, you had the bug zapper. And you'd hear like a bzzz, and that was a mosquito. And you hear a and that was like a moth that came in there. Humans have this tendency not to want to be bothered, so we put these things up. And moths have this innate kind of desire to fly to the light, which explains that annoying noise. Now, sea turtles, I figured for the cranes, we should bring up sea turtles too, because they're beach people over there. Well, the sea turtles have this instinct also in their brain where they're drawn to the stars, and they can't help but to act in certain ways. They just can't help it. Turtles are born, they peck out of their little eggs, they crawl out of the sand, they come out and poke their eyes up and look at the sky, and they orient themselves to the light, head to the water, go out and do their sea turtle thing. But these days, people have built things by the beach. So there's houses, and there's all these artificial lights. And so the poor sea turtles, they get confused, and they go in the wrong direction. And they never live full sea turtle lives. Moths, same thing happens to moths. They go out to their little moth home at night, and they go eat something, and they're full, and they go to fly back to their home. But we have street lights, and we have headlights, and we have bug zappers, and they just can't help. And they're right into it. They see it, and they're drawn to it. You know what other creature acts like that? Us. It's not to light, but we have a natural desire, an innate longing, an instinct toward living a life that matters. It's pretty much universal. If it's not universal, we worry about those people when we find out that they're not moved by beauty and trust and truth. We think there's something wrong with them. And some explain it, they say there's like a God-shaped hole in our heart, and it can only be filled by God. And others say, life, the point of life is just reconnect with some source of our being, so that we can grow through that in love. All sorts of religions give it different names, give it different stories, but the basic thought throughout all humanity is that whether you call it God or faith or spirituality or significance, whatever you call it, we are compelled by something deep within to live out our lives in meaningful and loving ways. Some people take that to the extreme. They become monks, they become nuns, and they focus so much on that light, so much on that wind, so much on that living water. And they give everything about themselves to point in that direction. And other people, they get confused by the spectacle of modern living, and they burn themselves out trying to fulfill that need with entertainment, shopping, self-reliance, addictions. I'm going to hope most of us are somewhere in the middle of those two places. Somewhere in there. And whatever that middle is, we make decisions sometime in our lives, sometimes based on the most, inane and silly things, just to fill us with some kind of fleeting joy. And at other times, I think we do things in our life that is just holy. Whatever you call it, I call it holy, the way that we sometimes interact with each other. And I think that Samaritan woman is a little bit like us in this respect. She's every day she's stuck in these patterns of living where her best prayer would be just, God, blow that away from me. And yet, when she's met with truest joy, she's just eager to share that and to go share a better way of living. And in another respect, we're totally different because most of us don't get to have Jesus just wander up to our well for a little heart-to-heart. So since we, people here, live somewhere between the holy and being just harangued by stuff, somewhere between the sacred and just the spectacle of life, the question is, what if there was a way? What if we could find a way to point ourselves to that truer light of our being? The light that we're just connected to. What if there's a way to distinguish those kind of painful, illusory lights and point to the right one? What if there was a way to evolve past all the social ills that surround us and aim us and our world to new life? What if there was a way to answer the Spirit's calling? In our little vignette at the well, there are aspects of the story that should draw us closer to just better living. Great little aspects of the story. We see in Jesus this radical acceptance and a non-judgmental spirit, which is awesome. We're all for that. We see in Jesus these boundaries breaking down between the difference of the cultures and the conflict of their societies. That's awesome. We see a woman in their society. In fact, we see that woman in their little town finding reconciliation and embrace. And wouldn't that be amazing if little towns could do that? Those are great things. But even more, I think what's most important to anyone who really relates to this woman is that Jesus takes her chaotic experience, her full and messy life, and pulls out of it something of eternal significance. He shows us that whatever you want to call it, all of us are drawn to new life. And by following him, however you want to describe that, by following Jesus, we might actually find the love that defines new living. Now, we're always thirsty for answers and forgiveness and understanding and a better way to be us. And Jesus seems to say, yeah, it's great when you get glimpses of that, but what would it be like to soak that in and never be thirsty? How would you like to activate that innermost part of your being? The way he says it, if you only knew the gift that was offered to you, you'd ask. And next week, for those of you who don't connect as much to this woman, we're going to look at someone who actually just comes to Jesus and asks. Maybe the person who's a little more religious than spiritual, but not religious. But this week, we sit with this woman who stumbled into living water that just quenched the depths of her soul. And look what happens when she feels accepted and when she feels worthy. When she realizes what a difference Jesus can make to her and how she might orient and fill all the normal parts of her life, she starts asking questions. Questions that were probably sitting up here somewhere since Sunday school. And she just didn't know how to ask them. And look what happens when she takes the time, when Jesus takes the time to respond to her and converse with her. She throws down her jar. She runs into town. And she shares that with people who hurt her. She shares her transformation that is happening. And I don't think our transformations are going to happen that fast. Almost certainly anything you do spiritually in your life that grows you will take time, will take effort. But what if Jesus was the source of those answers, of that deep hunger? Or even just an answer? And what if this place was the place where you could ask those questions, or just a place where you could ask those questions? And what if you were able to throw down your jars And throw away your lists of anxiety and of pride and resentments and of the habits that hold you back. And what if you were just to let the Spirit blow that away? And if you were so filled with joy that you just had to go and share it? What if?